So thank you everyone for joining. Really appreciate it. So this is this kind of a pilot of what we're calling open source chat. So what is the goal of open source chat?
It's a lounge, Curtis.
A lounge, excuse me.
Come on.
Yeah.
I brought my water too.
So
it is open source chats. Okay.
Sorry. Or lounge, yeah. There's two main goals. I am curious what you guys prefer. So first and foremost, a goal is just to connect users of the tool to the people who develop that tool. So developers can sometimes feel a little disconnected from end users. That's probably not a case with Rich here. And then users often, are unaware of how these open source software tools get made and get maintained. And then open source software just works better with an active and engaged community. And a better connection between developers like Rich and end users like yourself, or other contributors and developers like yourself. And then secondly, just thinking this as an opportunity for you guys to share with each other how you use the tool and how you approach common problems. So with that in mind, we would love to hear questions from you. I'm Curtis. I work at our studio, soon to be Posit, on the community team, and we'll introduce Rich in a moment. Also, a good portion of you may be watching this in the future, right after the live event. And I like to imagine this post-apocalyptic landscape in the distant future where someone has somehow got access to a YouTube data center or something. If you have those questions, just go to the GT Package Twitter account. Rich would be able to respond to you there.
It's a good account.
Yeah. Cool. So just introductions. So this is Rich. He's on our studio's Quarto team, soon to be Posit, or as you may or may not know, our studio is changing its name to Posit for a number of reasons, and is the maintainer of the GT package. The GT package strives to empower anyone to make wonderful looking tables with R. The philosophy is we can construct a wide variety of useful tables with a cohesive set of table parts. And then this is done with an R package that has a number of helper, strives to be intuitive and easy to use, and helps you make kind of custom tables. So there's many helper functions that help you modify and customize your table. It sort of assumes where you start with this data frame, and then a table is built up of stubs, summary rows, titles, subtitles, columns, headers, footnotes, source notes. And then there's a number of formatter functions for the values of that table. And then the other goal is to offer you a wide variety of output formats. Currently supported is HTML, PDF, or LaTeX. It's LaTeX to have PDF. Rich text RTF files, which I love that it's called rich text files since we have Rich here. Right. And then recently added
best text files. Sorry.
Recently added was Word doc. So most questions will come from the audience, but we have prearranged a bunch of questions just to kind of get the ball running. But we do intend to switch to just discussion and questions from all y'all. And then, so if you work with GT actively now, if you have feedback, if you're struggling to create tables that you need, this event is designed for you. It's very much interacting with Rich as the maintainer of the GT package. So yeah, thanks for joining us, Rich.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This is great. The inaugural lounge event.
Yeah, I really appreciate you doing this pilot and experiment. Yeah. And I also really appreciate everyone who's joining us as well. So just the first question to get out of the way is, how do I pronounce your last name? Because I recently learned I mispronounced it.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Time. I go with Iannone or Iannone. It's tough. Iannone's probably your best bet.
So Iannone, as it's basically spelled here. But
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I should know that. Next serious question is, I look back at your talk in, I think, 2019's our studio conference. You joined in 2018 and been working on this since May or March of 2018.
More like May.
Yeah. So, if you could, I gave a little introduction to GT. If you could kind of give your introduction and why are you spending so much time on, why are you investing so much into this?
Yeah, I think it's mostly because there's so many problems to solve. I worked on it. We had the initial release like in late 2018. And then soon after, tons and tons of issues, which was great. I love issues. But there are all sorts of like little things like that. Some things I thought of, but some things I didn't. And I'm still getting these issues, even with lots of like changes and tweaks and additions. I think there's so many things that people want out of tables because it's kind of a creative pursuit. And it's a bit like a visualization in a way. There's no like hard and fast rules. You can do whatever pretty much, as long as you have some sort of grid of numbers or or otherwise. But yeah, there's tons of stuff to do. So I just kept doing it. Nobody told me to stop. Yeah, and there's so much to do, especially in just the static table scenario, just like tables on a page or on a website. Yeah, I think we're almost getting to the end of like the conceivable things that people want. That's why I'm sort of shifting my attention to like other things, like those questions I had, branching out maybe to other output formats or getting interactive. But I still think there'll be a lot of work even in the non-interactive case, because there's so many small things you can do to make better.
And I have a kind of a set. I warned you about this question. It's a little bit vague, but
Okay.
Just to set things up, right? As a company, one of our goals is to support open source software for data science. So can you tell me, like, you could conceivably working as a developer at a fancy software company, not that Posit is not fancy, but yeah. So why are you investing so much into open source? Like why is this an open source package? Why do you care so much about this
why do open source in general? I think it's great because you have this interaction with the community. You get like issues, you get to talk to people in issues, you get PRs. People are sometimes sending their first, or maybe they're experienced. We have different levels of people coming in, but it's great. You're helping people sort of like contribute. It's like all about interaction and contributions, and it's great to see something like develop kind of like semi-organically that way. I know like like the maintainer probably has like one vision, but it can be totally steered and shaped by people in the community, and I think that's kind of wonderful in a way.
So what would be your message to why, right? If I have some options for developing any sort of software, why as a user would I maybe prefer open source over some alternative that's not?
Oh, yeah. Lots of reasons. Well, one thing is like if you see like a thing that you want, or something that's not quite right, it could be a bug or an enhancement, you could just make the PR and convince the person to accept it, or like work towards getting that accepted. And that can be really fast. I've seen it happen within a matter of, in best cases, hours. Sometimes it can happen over a longer period, but it'll happen way faster than closed source software. I can tell you that. At least you have a fighting chance with open source. And like, if the project is active, it's extremely fast. It's amazing, actually, how fast you can make changes and how much you can sort of help a project out, just even if you're on the outside.
Awesome. Well, thanks a bunch.
Yeah.
Well, so as a reminder to folks, feel free to post some questions into the Zoom chat, as well as if you're keen on more of an anonymous type structure, there's a Slido link at rstd.io/OSS-chat. Feel free to drop stuff in there. The second half we'll switch to discussion, that sort of thing. Just to get the ball rolling, we've set up a couple questions focused on GT. GT 0.7 just came out. Could you kind of introduce, what's in GT 0.7 and tell us a bit about what one of the parts, right, is this vector formatting functions?
Yeah, that's kind of a big thing. Okay, there's two like really big things. The first is the first support for docx output, like Word output format. So that's just beginning. So keep your expectations not too high, because it's just beginning. So there's going to be a few like sort of like things to sort of like patch over, but at least it's a start. So we've got that sort of going. The other thing is the vector formatting functions, and I can show you that because it's kind of a big thing. So we spend a lot of time making these formatting functions so you can get your values and whatnot formatted just like how you want them. I'm going to share my screen, and I'll show you. I got this like document I set up, and it's got all these things in here. And it's actually a lot of functions. If you look at these are all the functions I had in 0.7. They all begin with vec underscore fmt. So the existing functions are just beginning with fmt. So those are already in the package, like pre 0.7. But we add these ones that begin with vec and continue on the same name. So the idea here is you can just like use those formatters outside of GT if you want. So you have a vector, you just format it, and you have the same arguments that you would have in the sort of like the function that was there before. So it's better to show it than it's to tell, because it's a little confusing. So let me just show you. So I got this vector of numbers, just some numbers, and I'll use vector format number on this. And then if you look at my console, it just formats them to 2 decimal places because that's the default for that. So I can change that to like 3 decimal places. So kind of neat. So we're totally outside of GT. We just have a vector and we're using the same functions that you would use to format columns of values, but we're using them outside. So why do this? Well, there's this thing called R Markdown in Quarto, or other things like that. You may just want to have formatted values in your text. So you can have these inline sort of like R pieces or R chunks. And you just throw in like a vector, like a vec format function in there. And get the same sort of treatment as you would in your table, which is super cool. So I'll show you a few more examples just to acquaint people. So you have some options here for the separator mark and the decimal mark. You can change those. So basically those are reversed. So other locales will have that by default. So you can just insert the locale, like here is France. And we have the same sort of thing right there. That takes care of that. There's a bunch of options, basically the same options, as I said, that are in format number, which is this function here. And here's the help doc. Basically, all of these carry over, which is kind of cool. So if we did this, force sign equals true, just a few more examples, that means like you get a plus sign always. That's pretty good if you want to show change from a value. Drop trailing zeros. So that means like any zeros that are at the end will be dropped. Accounting, we have that. And you can always use a pattern if you want to adorn your values with some sort of text, either before or after. So that's like a sort of review. And it's kind of neat because this is just like in the console, we're getting our values just formatted.
Yeah. So, this reminds me of scales a bit. Like you often have to pull in scales
Yeah,
to a ggplot.
Exactly.
So we have package.
Exactly. So we have vector format currency, and we do the same sort of thing with numvals. And speaking of which, there's in scales, dollar. And you can do the same sort of thing, like numvals, I believe works. Same sort of thing. Except in scales, there's only dollar and euro, I believe, and there might be pound. But vector format currency has basically every single currency type, so which is kind of neat. So you can just choose the currency in there. So that's kind of neat. So same sort of use case. If you're using this outside of ggplot, just inside text, you can use these. They're sort of interchangeable, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, I can imagine you put in a ton of work so that your users could customize the look and feel of the value within the table. And that's you've showed me, I've gone through sort of, if you include all the parameterizations and all the examples of those, we're talking about hundreds of different ways to look at things, right? And so basically with this it's now available outside to anyone. So you could put it into a ggplot or a plot.
Exactly. Or inside text, inside sort of inline or bit. Yeah. I'll show you a new function we have. There's actually 2 of them because we have this like a set of 2 now. Format duration and vec format duration. It's kind of neat because I can just like provide examples with the vec form and just show them in the console. It's kind of like a nice way to avoid seeing a table each time. But this is all about duration values. You may not use them very much, but if you need them, this is great because it provides so many different ways to like provide like these human readable durations. So like 81 weeks, 2 days, 20 hours, 24 minutes, 32 seconds. It kind of does that automatically. So I don't know if you know about diff time values, but you can use those, or you can just use numerical values and provide the unit. So 2 different ways to sort of like put your inputs into this. But there's like tons and tons of options here. So again, I use the help a lot. If you just go to format duration, you'll see just a pretty large number of like different like arguments for tweaking the values. And of course, I provide examples here at the end. But let me just show you a few of these just to give you a flavor of what's in there. So we have that. We can also like just constrain the output units. So in this case, it's just days. We can provide a vector like that. And we can also, it's a little bit off the page here, but change the style of duration. There's 4 different styles. So Y just means we're not using H or M. We're using like the words essentially like this, which is kind of cool. And a big thing I do in GT is, because I know this package goes all over the world, is have locales, like a locale setting in each formatter function. And that should basically, this is not a machine locale, it's basically independent from your actual setup. But if you put ES, it'll produce like Spanish durations, which is kind of cool.
If I built a
like,
Shiny app and I somehow collected locale information from the user, is that something I could pass on, or is that, sorry, that's.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like there's tons of locales. So if I just change this, like it's that. So there's like, I think 700, and they're all translated and formatted correctly. Because there'll be all sorts of like differences in the way this is like patterned. So a lot of time went into that, making sure that worked. So, but I'm really happy that we have all this like for every single formatter function now. We also have another one. I just want to show you one more. It's the scientific one, because I want to draw your attention to like some special stuff at the end. Okay, first of all, scientific notation. A new thing is now we have like a plain version of like scientific notation. So this right here, if you look at this, it's just basically like meant to be sort of like inline in a console. This is called the plain formatting style. And you don't really know this, but by default, there's actually a output, which is called auto. So in the console, it'll just be plain, but you can force that to be like plain, like this. So I'm just going to zoom ahead and sort of get at what I'm trying to show you. This output argument, it now like can make the it can make the outputs like HTML, LaTeX, or RTF. So I'll show you that, because this is stuff that's kind of hard to type out or to format yourself. But if you have an HTML document, it's perfect because it'll be formatted nicely. If you have a LaTeX document, same sort of thing. Sort of stuff that's a little bit hard to write yourself, maybe impossible to do in like GT right now anyways. RTF is right there. So the idea here is, because we have it as auto, we can just put this in like Quarto, and it'll detect what the output is, and it'll just choose. So if you have an HTML document in Quarto, it'll choose a nice formatting, which is basically using tags. So let me show you that. So I have this right
I had
here.
no idea that. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, there's like so much stuff going on. That's why it's like, oh my God, I got to show you all this. So we have a Quarto document right here. So we're just setting it up with GT and tidyverse. We're making a table. There's a nice data set inside GT called pizza place. I make a pizza summary. I make a table, and then I display the table finally. Great. Okay, but the thing I want to show you is the new thing. Basically, in this little inline code chunk with backtick R. So I've got an object pizza summary, which is a table, and I'm pulling a value out of it. And then I'm getting the max one, the max element of the vector. And then I'm using one of those vector formatting functions. And I don't have to like specify like the type, like the output. It just auto kind of knows what we're doing. But this is really kind of neat, because like it gives you like the HTML like formatting, and with diagonal, like as a layout, it's got like a nice slash, and like the number on the left is superscripted and subscripted on the right. Kind of hard to pull off if you're just doing it yourself. But you can do it here, which is kind of cool. And there's also a bonus as well in version 0.8, which is not released yet, but it's in like the dev version. We have another function called extract cells, which allows you to just, from a GT object, take a formatted cell right out. So you don't have to like redo all this stuff. So there's like two ways to do things. So basically the formatting that's applied will just be like taken and put into the document. Let me just show you that. I'll render this.
Yeah, I feel like you've been setting it up and teasing us.
A lot of setup, yeah. But the final result will be really cool. But it's good to see like, where it's coming from, and the source and the output. Okay, so here's the table. Well, here's the source for the table. The table. So you can see we have fractions here, nicely formatted. Really cool. But here in the text, look at this, 5/10 in that sort of fancy HTML way. So with tags. Same here. What we did here is 2/10, because we've targeted the column F sold. You don't know what it is, because it's actually, like right here in this pizza summary. Or actually, no, it's in the GT table. And then rows 14. So we just grabbed row 14, which I believe is the last one. And it's 2/10. So basically this formatted value, you don't have to repeat that, because it already knows what the formatting is. You're just sort of grabbing it and then putting it here, which is super cool. If you want to cite values in a table, you don't have to run the risk of having formatting errors or like transcription errors. You just like You're just pulling it, which is handy. So that's one to show you there. That's like one of the sort of like cool things about the vector formatting functions and that new function extract cells.
Does GT have a cheat sheet? Because
No,
I feel like the back of that should probably be just showing you, giving you a sense of the scope. Like I said, you have a couple dozen functions, and then when you include all the parameter options, you're now getting into hundreds of ways to customize the look and feel. Like it would be awesome to be able to quickly review kind of what our options are. So I guess it's just assume that there probably is an option and then dive into your docs to, if that's the
pretty much. Yeah. What I've done to help that is to make the man files, like the help files here, at least as much informational as possible. They're huge documents, but they at least have examples. And I try to like, flesh things out in like detail sections right here like this, if it warrants more explanation, but at least try to have like reproducible examples. So this table, like this code will produce this table. And there really should be more like stuff like that. But at least there's like a guarantee of one per help article. And also the other thing I pledged to do is for each help article, just show one function instead of like a bunch of functions at one time. Less confusing and kind of gets to the point a bit more. I mean, it's more documentation to do, but that's fine. So be it. Yeah. So, but yeah, a cheat sheet would be a good thing. I got to get on that. That's the thing I should have done a long time
for the sake of time. Let me just jump to because there's two more demos you wanted to show off that highlight 0.7, and then we got several questions. So I think let me just jump to those right now too, because I at least know this next tier you were pretty keen to share as well. So yeah, in 0.7. There's a new opt stylized function, which is sort of like applying, I mean, you're about to show us, but it's sort of like applying sort of a theme to a table. So you could have multiple tables with minimum effort to kind of have different similar looking tables or similar themes applied to it. So could you provide an example or two with the new styling function? What kind of tables can you make with that? Can you extend that with your own tweaks? And then second part question, which I asked you, and I know I've seen, is similar to ggplot themes where it's really easy to build your own theme. What kind of support is there for that now for building your own theme, like a company theme or a personal theme, and applying that? So thanks.
I can definitely get to all those things. So the new opt stylize function, it's great. I mean, let me show you. So I'll make a table and I'll show you that table. We're finally seeing a table, which is kind of cool. So I'm gonna run that and get it right here in the viewer. Okay, so here's my table. So this is just like the defaulty look, like just a plain table coming out. I mean, there's a bit of formatting. There's like all the different sections, like summary rows. This is a grand summary, as you can see by the double line. And it's got some like, it's got a footer section, a title, a stub on the side, and group summary rows. Great. It's got all the parts are there. But now we can style them. So we did opt stylize. And look at this. There's like so many options because there's 6 colors that we chose and 6 different styles. That makes 6 different, like jumping off points. So let's show you a few of them. Here's one. Okay. So look at that. So it does styling, and that's in the blue color. We have cyan. There, I'm just going to run through them. Pink, red, and gray. So why do we have just these colors? The reason is we want to sort of carefully curate this in order to get maximum contrast between like the text and the background colors, and just to get some sort of harmony. We chose actually a number of different hues, and it's more apparent when we look at different like the different themes, like the different numbered styles. Like for instance, this one, it has like a dark blue and a lighter blue, and perhaps even lighter blue, or something in the middle. There's actually 5 different hues for each color. And it's interesting, like I called these styles just 1 to 5. And then just last night when I was like preparing this, I was like, maybe we should have names for these different styles. So I took a stab at this, like this is like almost like a colorful stub, because at least you do get a color there. This one draws your attention to the summaries because both of them have a background color. This one is dominantly gray, but it at least has some color at the top right there. And this one has, a different style in terms of like dashed lines right few of them. So I try to make it a little bit different. So you have jumping off points, because this may not be the thing you really want in the end. Like if it is, that's, it's fantastic. But it might, it might need some tweaks, right? But the great thing is you can do that because all the changes you make are sort of like additive in the end. So we have this example table, for instance, and we use off stylize. Style 5, color green. Looks pretty good. But maybe you don't want the row striping. You can sort of see that here in rows 2 and 4 and further down as well. We can get rid of that just with opt row striping false. Now that is going to be gone. Oh, sorry, I included the pipe. Try it again. There we go. So that's a tweak we made. So away from like the original sort of like theme result. Maybe you don't want the outline that's around the table. You can remove that as well. Great. Now we're getting somewhere. Say you want the table header to be aligned left. No problem. We can do that. Nothing else is disrupted. It's basically just like independent of everything else. And maybe you want some other options, like, and there's tons of these. I am both proud and also a little bit embarrassed about how many options are in tab options. So it's a bit unwieldy, but it gives you at least tons of control, like over the look of the table. And it's not hard to use once you know where to look. So for instance,
can I
table
ask
body,
about that as
please.
kind of a design question?
Yeah.
Why are you embarrassed about that? Like, are you
Well,
suggesting there's like an
if you look at the
alternative
help
way?
article, it's it's massive. So tab options. I mean, this is an area where we can just scroll and scroll and scroll. I mean, this is okay. I mean, I think ggplot has something similar to this, although it kind of breaks it down a bit more. Yeah. But it is at least all in one function. It's kind of like it's a lot, and there's lots of explanation at least. But I can understand it would overwhelm. There's some examples, more than the usual amount, but I believe this deserves like an article. Just to go through all these things. But if you do need to change things table wide and not have to resort to like targeting specific areas with tab style, this is a pretty good place to go. So for instance, we can change like the vertical lines and just get rid of them with none. We can add a top and bottom border to the table. So let's take a look at that whole thing. There we go. So now we have that line there and this line down here at the bottom. And the theme, it's weird. It has like invisible things that are not turned on. So if you do turn them on like this, it'll be part of the theme, although it's kind of like not there sometimes. It's a little bit strange. But yeah, so this is an example of like taking it further, starting with op stylize and then, tweaking it to your satisfaction. So if you're like a company and one like your logo in there, you can probably do that just by inserting like an SVG or some sort of graphic in the header or above that. Unfortunately, I don't have an example of that, but maybe I'll have that for next time because that seems like a pretty obvious thing. Okay, more about theming. So say you wanted to do this all the time, you could definitely make your own function. So I have a function here called my theme. Pretty simple. All I did was I took this right here, replaced example table with data, put that as the only argument in the function of my theme. And then this should totally work. I mean, even if you don't have these parts, like if you don't have like a tape, like a header, the function won't stop. It'll just do with it what it will and not error out. So this is kind of cool. So my theme, we have that function. Here's the example table, and here's the example table with my theme. There we go.
And
so
is that
cool.
additive on top of it too? Like if I wanted to then, suppose there's a company theme and I then wanted to tweak it?
You can keep going. Yeah, you can add different options. You can have as many tab options calls as you want, like that. So yeah, definitely. So yeah, my theme. So even more about theming. If you really want to make your own thing and maybe bypass op stylize, just go a different direction, you can make, I call this function my super custom theme. Same sort of idea. Data is like the argument. You can call it anything you want. It's basically just the GT table. And, use tab options. And again, it's huge, but it kind of like lets you target different areas. This is just at random, so it's gonna look terrible, but I wanted to show you this. Oh, and also, isn't this cool? Like the new IDE from our studio shows the colors. That is so incredibly helpful. Because sometimes I'm just guessing, and if it shows a color, it's like, oh yeah, I got the color right. So yeah, let me show you that. So This is my
For
new
weeks,
function.
that's helpful. Yeah, but
Yeah,
steal
yeah.
the
Yeah, like I'm just guessing old names that I might have known. Okay, so here's the example table. And this is with my super custom theme applied. There we go. So basically, it's like making your own op stylize function in a way. And this is kind of what op stylize is mainly doing in the body itself of the function. Sort of an inside look. But yeah, here's the table. So all the different sections are styled according to this. So kind of neat.
Where do you think development is going to go with this? I've poked you about this before. I've seen one or two message on Twitter where, yeah, like the GD plot is sort of a really nice standard. As I understand, it's a pretty good, nice standard. Is this sort of the way you're going to be encouraging people to have this sort of theme that you could apply to multiple tables?
I think so. I think so. Like you can either do like, just have like the different, statements, or you wrap it up in your own custom function. I think this is the way to go. And just maybe some more documentation around this, because sometimes it's hard to imagine you can do that.
Yeah.
Or whether it would work really well. But having a little recommendation there in the docs would be my next step with this. Because I think the model is not bad. I mean, you can overwrite things. It's kind of like a settings table, which is just basically like, like just set, I guess. Yeah, it's nice that you can sort of iterate rapidly, with this and just run the function, change a few things, run it again. And then you have a function you can use over and over again.
We have a bunch of questions coming in, and some we'll get to in a moment, but one is actually very much fit to what we're talking about now.
Okay.
So Max, would you like to ask the question? It's just based on what's on the screen right now.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah.
First, great package. Some really cool things here. But I was just wondering what the kind of design distinction is between having a function in the opt set of functions, opt underscore, and then having tab options. Like, why would something be in tab options and not opt stylize? For example?
Yeah. I think part of it is tab options just being so big. It's hard to find important things out of that. So basically what we did with opt functions is try to elevate a few things that were hard to find, or it is a combination of things of different settings which are changed in tandem, which might be not, incredibly not obvious at all. Like for instance, well, I'm not gonna go through the code, but the opt stylize, that changes a bunch of things in tab options and it provides a simple interface. You just need to have a style number and then just have a color that's, one of the accepted colors. It'll change a bunch of things for you in tab options. You don't have to hunt through them and like specially set things. There's like at least like 24 things which are changed with just this function. Things with striping, that is less the case. I mean, there's probably an option inside tab options that does that, but this just elevates it and exposes it, makes it a little bit easier to find and discover. So that's some of the things. Either it's like way too complicated or it's hard to discover. Those are the things that sort of warrant or maybe think that the opt functions, have a place in this package.
Okay, great, thanks. That makes sense.
Any more questions? It's good.
There's some that are sort of out of this context. Yeah. So
Okay.
I didn't want to. This was just a perfect fit for here. So yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I've also got more. If you're okay with me showing it to you.
Yeah. Go ahead. Maybe after this we'll switch to. There's so many questions on Twitter that kind of fit into nice themes that I think would cover a lot of questions that people have. So we'll get to those right after that.
Yeah. Okay. I did this last night, like this little document. And I was like, I just wanted to keep going because it was, it was kind of nice. So maybe this version 0.8 preview. I have like one function I do want to show, which is really super neat. It's something that's been asked about for a while. It's basically just like a find and replace. With whatever value with a new value, and it's kind of nice actually. I don't know why I didn't get to it earlier, but anyways, at any rate, it will be here soon with 0.8. The function is called subvalues, and the idea is I'll just make this table. Great, and so if I just show it in GT just to get like a basis, so you have this table, this make-believe table, and there might be a scenario where you just want to replace certain values, like like 74 and 500 are just like example values. they're just literals. Like you're just searching for them and you want to replace with some other value. So you can totally do that here. It's an easy interface just for like making quick tweaks. And it's kind of nice because you can format these values before and then just like sub in some new values, and it doesn't like affect or alter any formatting you've done, which is pretty cool. So like, a value like B could be replaced with the word B, or 800 could be 800 like this. So I'm trying to be flexible. It could be different types here. It just searches all across the table. You can definitely constrain across certain columns if you don't want the replacement to be like too much. But at its simplest is basically looking at all values and just it's simple find replace, either on literals. Here we can use a pattern like a regex and then do replacement. So here it could be AC or E is replaced with the word ace. And then if you really want something a bit more flexible, you can just have your own function in there and then do a search across values or whatever you want to do to target values. So in this case, any value which is greater than or less than 50 will get this text. And it's kind of cool because it just skips over things which are like character columns. It doesn't like stumble over those and error out. So that's a little preview, sort of like the post-credits scene, I guess you can say, for this. Yeah, I wanted to show you that.
Awesome. Well, if we could switch to some participant questions. I'm going to jump to Slido first. So those were the anonymous questions. And also just a reminder to everyone, feel free to drop any comments or discussion topics or questions into the Zoom chats. If you want to do anonymous, we have a little Slido link that I'll share in chat in just a moment, and you can ask those there. There's also a nice poll that will be a discussion topic as well. But yeah, so first anonymous question is, what is your current support for LaTeX at the moment? Personally, I much prefer HTML, but for scientific publications, we are asked to provide a LaTeX file. And then also, I guess, fitting to that, what would be your suggested workflow? Like a lot of docs are sort of assume I'm going to do everything in R Markdown doc or everything in a Quarto doc, and that's the thing I submit. But very often, I just need to make a table that then a co-author incorporates into an existing, highly customized LaTeX doc.
Yeah, so you're sort of exporting it out. You're using GT as a tool to make that table, but ultimately you're going to take that code and put it in a different document, not sort of away from like R Markdown or Quarto. Yeah, I think with LaTeX, we want to make it better. It's not nearly close to parity with HTML as it could be. I mean, certainly some things that are in HTML can't be in LaTeX because it's paginated, but a lot of things can, like cell backgrounds and changing colors and having just raw LaTeX text if you want to sort of inject that. That's sort of missing. The reason why it's missing is because I didn't see there's much demand for that yet. Usually when I look at LaTeX tables, they're pretty unadorned with things like color and other things like that. They're pretty much almost like bog standard tables. I kind of have to wonder if that's because it's just really hard to make tables with, all sorts of things in it, because you have to use packages and things like that. But I almost feel like if you had the option, maybe some people would use that. So it's kind of at that weird standstill, right? We don't really know how much we need to do in that. If it's, like if that export option is satisfactory or not. Certainly, I get the indication that it's not quite there because some people prefer to have at least those few things in there. So I think we'll address that.
I'm going to be asking you this a couple of times. If I was a GT user or potential GT user, how do I let you know what I want and need or would like?
Lots of ways. Yeah, lots of ways. So LaTeX tables are a nightmare. I understand. Basically, issues is a great obvious way. Other ways is it captures things and sort of puts it on the record and it's actionable by me. Another way is the discussions inside the GitHub repo for GT. There's a new sort of feature. It's not that new anymore, but it's basically a part of GitHub. It's called discussions. If you feel something is not really like an issue or you just have a question or something like that, put it in there. Other places, RStudio community. Usually I see all this stuff, so that's a great place. Stack Overflow is not that bad because you usually have other people answering your question quickly, and it may be just like you'll find it's a bug, so you'll just end up, you might end up like posting that bug as an issue in the GT repo. So lots of ways. Those are the few obvious ways. It could be like Twitter as well, like on the GT_package account.
You listed
Yeah.
6 ways. So yeah, like the only
Yeah.
option left is like give your email out or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Call me up. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, yeah, those are pretty good ways. I definitely see them like every single day. So if a new issue comes in, I'll try to triage it and reply back, and at least like sort of like get that like sort of like in a milestone. And you may not see results for a while, but maybe you will. Maybe you will.
So this is a call. You'd love to hear those types of suggestions or feedbacks.
Yeah. Oh,
So
absolutely.
it's either improve the docs if a feature exists, or put it on the pipeline if it becomes a priority.
Yeah, and I just had like a few recent issues about docs, about sometimes certain parts are confusing, they don't read well. I love stuff like that because like I want to know what's confusing. Like maybe at the time it was even confusing to me, but I just sort of had to put that in. But sometimes things need revisions just because things change in weird ways and the docs get stale. But I definitely want to hear that. And it seems like also if you're willing to like make a PR, I would love that too, because like I can guide the PR process, make little changes, make suggestions, whatever your level of comfort is with a PR, especially for things like docs, because that's like easiest sort of way to like make a big impact. It's just changing text really. But I love all the issues.
I will work with you to summarize this kind of advice and make sure it's in the video description, as well as share it afterwards. There's a quick question from Slido as well. So this is not GT related, but when you showed the color highlighting in the RStudio IDE, how do you turn that on? Or is it just, or I guess what's that feature?
I think it's automatically turned on. There might be an option to turn it off. I think there is an option to turn it off. But with mine, it was by default on. And where I got that was from an RStudio daily release. So if you go to dailies.rstudio.com, that's where all these, very recent like builds of the IDE live. They're pretty stable. I use them once in a while just so I can catch up on what's new. But I really, some of these things are great. Like the color thing is like a dream. I never asked for it, but I don't know. I love it. It's
nice.
You're using colors like, and you do that in GT a lot. So it's great to see that it's verified that you're getting it right.
So another question from actually is I'm going to mispronounce your name, sorry, but is Erdi here? ERDI asked a question early on. Give a couple more seconds and just read the question.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, kind of earlier in the discussion, Erdi had asked, in my work, I often produced A4 output and PDF, mainly with ggplot content. It would be nice to be able to combine ggplot plus GT tables in a similar way to how patchwork works. Having the plot and the table next to it is very useful sometimes. How would interactive GT tables be different from reactable? I guess that's different. That's actually a topic we'll get to in a moment. Yeah.
But for that first one, GT patchwork, I can totally see the appeal of like arranging plots with tables in a sort of like nice way. I think some early sort of like looking at that was done, mostly by Ellis and I believe Tom as well. So we're looking into that. It seems like a difficult thing, kind of like one of those high difficulty but high reward sort of like projects. Although it does seem like it would be like a slam dunk if we got that in as a real feature. I mean, there's so many things, Chris. But that is like a good one, especially as it relates to like our new publishing endeavors with Quarto. And I'll actually check in to see if like Quarto could do some of this as well, as not as a replacement, but as another way of like arranging like these things together. But yeah, we're looking into that, essentially, is the short answer. Maybe not a very satisfying answer.
That's fine. So another kind of big theme. So ahead of time we had posed the kind of a question on Twitter, and then there's a couple similar questions in here as well. Let me set this up.
Yeah.
There, set it up. So
yeah,
basically, would you like interactive tables with GT? There's been a couple questions in at least one question in Zoom and Slido and then these as well. So yeah, I'm kind of curious what your thoughts are on the ability to add interactivity. Reactable is obviously is already very popular for doing creating interactive or having interactive features added to a table. So yeah, I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
I'll say like this is like a thing we want. But we never focused on
to highlight a couple big points, right? Is search. In fact, you could see my comment there as the third one. Search and kind of column filters, that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, the great thing about Reactable is that we can use that as infrastructure for GT. I actually have a branch. It's not really a PR yet, but it's like an experimental branch of GT that has like interactive tables. And it basically uses Reactable under the hood. So we can apply the same sort of API things that GT has, but just use Reactable as the engine for producing tables. To make this work nicely, we have to make sure that all the styling and all the things that you expect come through. We have to know, not know, but we have to figure out, how summary rows would work inside of like this new interactive table. Maybe they don't work, but we want to make sure the look and feel is sort of retained, but still using like all the work that's been done in Reactable. Because I think it's kind of like a little bit, not counterproductive, but a little bit too much work to like reinvent, like another like interactive table project just for like one feature. So that's something I've been exploring, and the early results are pretty good. Like you get all the features, you get the searching, you get like the filtering, like all that good stuff, and you can turn them on selectively as you would with Reactable. It's just you don't have to type out a bunch of Reactable code. You just use GT code, maybe switch an option, a few more things in tab options for switching things around, and then you're pretty much there in the same place.
Can the community help in some way or start testing things out?
Yes. Yeah. My first thing is to make that sort of public as a PR and make an issue that pairs with that. And then just, illicit comments from the community. I think that'd be great. Yeah. And then, publicize that a bit so people actually know that it's being, done. Yeah, that'd be good. I'll have that going like this week, actually. No, it's actually a good thing. I've been testing it recently, and like, it's a thing that's constantly asked, and it's a big thing, but to be able to push across the finish line, you just have to like, get back to it and, work on it. So yeah, that's great. That's great.
There's another question from Zoom. Is Arthur still here? Would you like to ask? Sorry, you asked it probably at least 40 minutes ago. So if I can't catch you, this is what the question was. I'm dropping into chat right now.
Okay.
Is Arthur there by chance?
Yes.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah. So the question is this. So like GT has this nice way where you can kind of style rows that may kind of defy a certain validation rule, let's say. But currently it seems like one needs to, add a new tab style per rule. Are there any thoughts for making this easier? Like, I don't know, something like dplyr across, or some other way of like kind of implementing this across several, like applying to several columns?
Yeah, I believe you can do that. You have one rule for how you want to style, and then you have multiple columns. You can use a vector of columns, or you could do a tie select. You can use where, like where is numeric, for instance, would be one thing. Yeah, let me know if that doesn't work, because like my current understanding is you just supply a vector of columns, or any sort of tie select statement should do it. I believe if you do that, the columns all have to exist. No, actually, if you just include a vector, they all have to exist. If you're using tie select, they don't. You can use like something like begins with, or starts with, or ends with, things like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks. I'll tinker and come back to you if it doesn't work as expected. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Definitely let me know, because like, yeah.
So this is another question that I really wanted to ask you. This is a question that came from LinkedIn from Jean-Claude. And what part of the reason why I want to bug you about this is when you gave your talk at RStudio Conf in 2019, you had a question for the audience that was this as well.
Yeah.
So I think so Excel output is basically the question. It would be a huge improvement. I often have to produce tabular output that would be easily used. Usually it means Excel tables. So far, mainly do this in Python with some libraries. A simple R solution would be great, preferably with full control over cell, numeric formatting, borders, merge cells, replacement, that sort of thing. If you could do that by Christmas, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I've heard this a long time ago. I wasn't sure how many people would do this because it seemed like there was already solutions in place for doing this, but not really, right? Like not with the API that GT has. So this may be a thing. Like this would definitely come way before like something like PowerPoint that was also asked for. So yeah, and it's not in there because you didn't ask for it exactly. What type of table output are you? So docx is big. I'm thinking like anything Office is kind of big because like Office is big. So, but I'm hoping with the new docx stuff that we have in, things like PowerPoint and Excel are not too far off because they both use XML, and we're using the XML, basically this open XML code generation to create that Word document.
Nice.
So it might be, it might be close. Like it might align like very closely with Excel. As far as I know, like each tag has like the name of like the Office product in the front of it, and then like it's used. But I'm not sure if there's like different arrangements of the tags depending on the output format. But I want to say it's pretty close. So it may not be something that's like totally like new and like an entirely like separate project. It might be like just part of like the Word or Office project, as it were. So I'll look into that. Like the first part is sort of like investigating, like how much work will it be, like in estimating. But I've heard this time and again, like Excel is kind of like a big thing. So it's it's kind of impossible to ignore at this point. So yeah, basically I'm going to look into that as well.
Cool. We just got a bunch of questions coming in with 4 minutes left. So first off, are you able to go after? Like, it'd be nice to maybe we could do a little summary for at the hour of how to get in touch with you, kind of go over those, the kind of calls to action you might have. And then, whether or not those folks are able to stick around, we could at least just get those questions answered so that there's a record of it. So first off, in the video description and associated with this, you kind of went over ways to get in touch with you. And so we'll share those as well. I saw Isabella actually shared those in Zoom chat. I did want to call out something as well. Tomorrow, right, you have a workshop at RN Pharma. It's free. It's if you just Google RN Pharma 2022 workshops, you'll get a nice list of them, and you want to add the Eventbrite group. And it's not GT, it's not tables. Can you kind of walk through what you're presenting tomorrow? Yeah,
it's a different package I work on called Point Blank. And totally different than GT, although it does use GT to make the reporting, the tables, as it were. But it's different. It's all about like validating your data, like, validation rules, things like that, to make sure you have correct data. And it's also concerned with data documentation. So in the outputs, you do get GT tables, which is kind of nice because I'm basically programming with GT. So it is possible to like use GT as like infrastructure for generating reports. So that's what that package does. So basically during that 3-hour workshop, I'll be going through all sorts of things dealing with data validation and data documentation, basically like making data dictionaries. And it's free.
Workshop's closed now, so I was mistaken. I thought it was open. Is it going to be recorded? Like, how would people get?
Yeah, it's going to be recorded, and I do have all my workshop materials available somewhere. It's in the repo called.
Your docs are great. I've seen those. Yeah,
it's in a repo called Point Blank Workshop, and it has like everything there. I'm going to share that just here in the Zoom chat. And it's nice because there's a RCO Cloud project there, so you can just run all the RMDs. It's basically an example-based, mostly an example-based workshop. I'll be running through all these things, explaining things, changing things up, inviting Q&A throughout. So hopefully within that 3 hours, you have some sort of like handle on how to use like the package. Yeah.
Is that an RStudio package?
It is not. It's my own sort of personal project.
You're an open source maniac. You're just creating.
I got my own things.
Nice things to do.
I do some things on the side. Yeah. But yeah.
Well, just to sum up for the hour, so folks who need to leave are able to. So thank you very much. This was our inaugural pilot open source chat with our guest, Rich. We'll get through as many questions as Rich has time for afterwards. So feel free to stick around. If you asked a question but weren't able to stick around, have a look at on YouTube where we'll publish this a bit later where you could see that discussion. So thank you everyone for hanging out and participating, and definitely reach out to Rich regarding kind of feedback and comments in the ways that he's gone over. Again, if you didn't catch that, check out the video description, and our follow-up will kind of cover out all of those ways to help make GT and open source software for data science better. And just again, thank you for being excited about participating in this and contributing in your own ways. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Had lots of fun. Yeah.
Cool. So as some folks are going to be dropping off, no worries. And I did not double check with you how much time you have left over, but maybe we could just kind of jump through as many questions as you can, or just let me know. Yeah,
absolutely.
Sweet. So Nithin had asked a question. In fact, he had warned us he was going to ask a question and then ask the question. So I want to make sure I get to him. Is Nithin there by chance, or did he jump off? I think he jumped off. Yeah, so are there, I think I'm gonna copy paste it so it's the most recent question in Zoom. Nathan, are there ways to have grouped rows? I mean, when repeated rows have same characters, we can merge them into one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do have that actually. So we have row groups. It's not well documented or exposed yet. I do have some examples, but essentially you do row group as column as a tab option. And then what it does is it takes the row group that's customarily at the top with the label running across, and it puts it on the leftmost side in the stub. And it doesn't repeat, across multiple rows. It just shows it once. So that's basically like, I hope that's what you expect. Like you just get like it shown once at the top, and then all the other like rows in that group are just like labeled.
And Steve Rolla had a suggestion as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have it? Do you know what it is?
I do. Yeah. Let me just drop it in the chat.
Yeah.
So some of the context I'm a little bit missing on. So I may have missed a little bit of the context.
Oh yeah, that's great. This is perfect.
Yeah.
This is showing tie select. So you can totally do this. Like where is numeric? Where is factor? This is great because like if you use format currency on columns which are not numeric, it won't work. So yeah, basically this is like pretty sweet. Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to note I'm the one, since I wrote it in there. Yeah, I use that when I know everything's numeric, but any of the tidy select I found work. You can do contains, contain, starts with, ends with, all of that works perfectly in Quarto. That's typically where I've used GT.
Yeah.
So.
And the great thing with tie select, instead of using explicit column names, is it won't fail on you. If it doesn't find those columns, it won't error. If you put explicit column names, then the expectation is that you have all those column names in there, and it will cause a stop or error. So yeah, tie select, it's good stuff.
Brittany B has at least one question. I think two questions. Would you be willing to ask those, Brittany?
Sure. So the first question is kind of like trying to get GT to be like an Excel screenshot. So at my company, one of the standards that they put around tables is that your table should have column letters and row numbers so that you can reference things like B5 or something like that. Is there a way to get that into GT tables?
Sort of. So you prefer to have like the like B1 at the top above a column name?
Right.
Yeah, you could. You just have to introduce like a line break and use markdown formatting for each of the column names. The trick there is, how do you make a line break at all? Well, at least with like with markdown, you have to use 2 spaces, then a /n. I'm gonna write that in the chat because it's not incredibly obvious. Actually, it's really hard to know this. I'm gonna see if I can write this like this. So if you have that in your column name, like say you have like of course you have to generate the letters yourself. But it's not gonna be too bad to do that. The trick is to get a line break to work. You have to use that, and then make sure you use calls label, and then use markdown, like the MD keyword or function. And then it should render nicely, like with a break, and then like with the actual column name.
What about the rows? Because wouldn't you want the rows to be sort of a separate looking almost column?
Yeah, that's more difficult because before it was not easy to use format markdown on like the row labels. But in a recent change to 0.8, which is yet to be released, that's not possible. You can use format markdown on a column, which is like the stub. And if you don't have a stub at all, same, you can just use format markdown and then use the same trick here. But yeah, you definitely have to use paste to get this going, or glue.
Brittany, you also have another question, and I feel that that this question actually I feel like this should be a blog post.
Because
it's
such
such a common.
I get this question so often, and because it's so difficult to like, we don't have a bunch of like nice affordances for like doing little obvious things like line breaks and other little things like that in GT, unfortunately, or subscripts or superscripts. And we can't deliver markdown, like at least the last thing I talked about, the subscripts and superscripts, but you can at least do line breaks, which is very common. But I don't really have that anywhere in an article, I don't believe, or very much, it doesn't figure into the help articles too much. So I think I should like try to get that in there as much as possible, or try to make some other, I can't think of another way of doing it, but there's gotta be another way of doing it.
Brittany also had another question, and you had brought this up earlier, but Brittany, would you like to ask it, or?
Yeah, I can jump in. So do you have any suggestions? So I'm kind of like the resident R expert on my team. So I'm doing a lot of things like trying to take some of those like templates or things from Word documents and like one-pager templates that analysts will put together around like a thing that they did, and trying to incorporate that into R. And I've done it with ggplot, where you can actually put the corporate colors in there and the like fonts and things like that. But is there something similar, or do you have suggestions for how I could maybe build out a similar type of function, but for like GT tables?
Yeah, certainly. So just going back to this, I'm gonna share my screen quickly. Right here, doing a bit of this would be good, but it doesn't get to the part where you actually introduce graphics to the header, which is kind of tough. It's almost like you want to make it like I don't have an example of this, unfortunately, but you could put a graphic into like the header at least, just by using HTML, and then doing something like this. This is not going to be a full example given the time restraint we have, but we can use tab header. You can at least have like title, and then something like HTML, and then put in like your custom HTML in there, which can include graphics and things like that into this part. I wish I had an example that I could just show you, but I think this is the key. If you want to put that in there, that would work. And it may not work in the custom theme part, but maybe it would with just some tinkering. So this is definitely another blog post idea or article idea, I think, because I kind of wish I had an easy solution for this. But I think this is like the way to at least get into the header. And this is kind of the way to set all the different colors and styles for the rest of the table. So maybe to be continued, more on this soon, because like not incredibly obvious how to do that.
I do sign up to make a list of everything you've either promised or half promised, so that at least that's hanging over you in some issue somewhere.
No, that's actually
tag the people. Yeah,
some things I just lose a little bit of track of, but I definitely want certain things to bubble up and be in my view again, for sure.
I think we hit every question. I did want to acknowledge that Iridi, who I think is still on, would have been happy to ask his question or her question, but was away at the moment, or had internet issues. But there, so I as far as I could tell, I think we've kind of gone through all of the audience questions as well as the ones from Twitter. I sort of grouped a lot of them together because there were common themes about preferred output formats or desired output formats. There were sort of two sets of questions regarding interactivity, which is just generally, I would like some, and then also focus mainly on search and filtering. But yeah, this is pretty much it. Unless folks would like to ask something additional, feel free to just open up your mic or pose it in chat. But otherwise, I think we're all good.
Yeah, and again, be not afraid to post issues. I love issues. Like I said, they sort of steer me into doing things like into priorities essentially. So yeah, definitely open an issue if you can.
And you may have got this earlier because I came in a little bit late, but one of the things that I've noticed and Googling it, it seemed like there's some other people mentioned as well with PDF output for wide tables. It doesn't shrink it down like it does on HTML if you're in PDF.
Yeah, that's right. It could be like I'm not using like the right long table options for that. There might be something already in long table, which is what we standardized on. And I think what a lot of like software that generates tables like Pandoc have standardized on for tables. It could be just, there's so many things we could be doing in the long table context, but maybe we're just not getting there yet. At least we split across tables. We don't repeat columns half the time. So that's an area of work for LaTeX output. That's, even coming before like styling of cells.
Do you have an issue on that yet, or is that something that I should follow up with as well? Because Steve, I think, asked in Twitter as well. I think if I'm remembering correctly.
Add an issue if there's already an issue, vote it up.
Okay.
Make some noise on the issue if it totally like affects your workflow. Yeah,
makes sense. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Unless anyone else, thank you so much for participating. Really appreciate this pilot. In 2 weeks, we're going to have another one where Greg Lynn, who's the package maintainer of Reactable, is going to be joining us for the same format. So hopefully y'all could join. Looking forward to participating in that. And well, that's looking forward. Just to be clear, thank you so much, Rich, for doing all of this with us and sharing all of this. Really appreciate it. Yeah.